Hello and welcome to the Print Live. We're coming to you from our newsroom in Delhi. The question we're asking today is, what explains the Election Commission's decision to delay Karnataka bypolls? So just for a little bit of context, yesterday the Election Commission in the Supreme Court said that it would be delaying the bypolls in Karnataka until the Supreme Court decides in the case of this 15 MLAs who were disqualified from the Karnataka Assembly after they defected from their parties, from the JDS and the Congress to the BJP. Remember this, after their defection and after they left their parties, the Karnataka government fell down a few months ago, and subsequently the Speaker of the House disqualified these MLAs from holding office, and later these MLAs of course went to the Supreme Court challenging the order of the Speaker disqualifying them, and since then the matter has been sub judice. So this is the context, and while the Supreme Court is still hearing the matter, the Election Commission, in what came as somewhat as a surprise move, last week said they announced the dates for these bypolls in Karnataka in these 15 constituencies, along with the elections in Maharashtra and Haryana. The Election Commission said that these constituencies will go to polls on the 21st of October. Now, obviously, this decision of this announcement of the Election Commission came as a shock for these MLAs who were hoping that their disqualification will not be that the Supreme Court will sort of stay their disqualification and they will eventually be allowed to contest elections. However, the Election Commission announcing the dates for the Karnataka bypolls, the window for these MLAs to be able to contest elections from, say, the BJP ticket actually sort of shrunk, and their prospects really came down. And what this basically would have meant would be that these 15 MLAs would not be allowed to contest elections until 2023, which is when Karnataka goes to polls again. So this announcement of the Election Commission had really sort of disappointed these MLAs, and speaking to our colleague, our correspondent in Karnataka, some of these MLAs said that they would actually urge the Election Commission or request the Election Commission to delay these bypolls somehow, so that the court sort of first delivers its verdict and then the Election Commission conducts elections in these states. However, on Monday, when the matter was listed in the Supreme Court, the Election Commission said that, the elections in these seats should not be stayed. However, the disqualification of these MLAs does not quite mean that they're disqualified from or they're barred from fighting elections. So even when we spoke to our sources in the commission, they said that this has consistently been the stand of the commission that if on account of defection MLAs are disqualified from their seats, what it means is that they're disqualified from their current office and not really from holding elections. So this is what the Election Commission said on Monday, that elections should not be stayed in Karnataka. However, just days later, on Thursday, that's yesterday, Election Commission took what was seen as a U-turn by many and said that we would be delaying the elections in Karnataka until the Supreme Court decides this case. And as you would read on the print website, we have a story on why the Election Commission actually came up with this decision, what really went behind this apparent U-turn by the Commission. As we have stated in our story, that the Election Commission's counsel, senior advocate Mr. Rakesh Dwivedi, actually wrote to the Commission advising the Commission to delay the bypolls because the council was of the view that having by-polls in the state before the Supreme Court decides comes up with a final verdict in the matter would really put the Election Commission in a catch-22 kind of a situation, because there would really be two scenarios. If the scenario one would be that if the Supreme Court upholds the disqualification of these MLAs and they are allowed to contest and they are elected to office again, the Election Commission would be forced to call for fresh polls right after the Supreme Court verdict. So basically this would mean, what this would mean is that the Election Commission would be forced to hold by-polls in these states twice. This other scenario would be that if the Supreme Court accepts the plea of these MLAs and sets aside their disqualification, and the Election Commission does not allow them to fight elections, then that would not be very fair to these MLAs who have defected, because they would not then be in a position to fight elections till the end of 2023, when elections in Karnataka, as I mentioned earlier, are scheduled next. So in order to avoid this sort of dilemma, the council advised the Election Commission that it is better to, for the sake of clarity and for the sake of efficiency, just delay the by-polls in the state. To be sure, this does not have this is not something that has happened before. Only last year we saw that, in 2017 we saw that about 22 MLAs had also been disqualified in the Tamil Nadu Assembly, and while the Election Commission was even then of the view that disqualification does not mean that the elections, that they are barred from fighting elections, but the Election Commission did not quite wait for the Supreme Court to deliver its verdict in the case, and said that these people should be allowed to fight elections nevertheless. But to be sure, this has been a grey area. It has been something that has really been, the decisions in this regard have been determined as per the discretion of the Speaker, as per the discretion of the Election Commission. As far as the law is concerned, it is a grey area, and that is why there is some degree of confusion when it comes to what happens when MLAs are disqualified on account of defection. Of course, critics of the BJP who have for a few months now been critics of the Election Commission as well, have including the Congress and the JDS, questioned the Election Commission's decision yesterday, saying that the Election Commission has basically given these MLAs the window and all the time to sort of prepare for the polls, and has basically ensured that the Supreme they get the sufficient time to prepare for the polls until the Supreme Court delivers its verdict on 22nd October. The Supreme Court, for its part, also sort of understanding perhaps the sensitivity of the case, said that, we are not inclined to give an interim order in this regard, and we would want to settle this matter once and for all, and so the matter has now been listed for 22nd October, and of course the Supreme Court has its reasons for listing it on 22nd of October, according to the letter that the EC's counsel wrote to the Chief Election Commissioner Sunil Arora, which we have written about on the print website right now. The Supreme Court factored in the fact that there would be the Shera in the middle, and some senior advocates were not available before the 22nd October. So this is how the Supreme Court decided on that date. And as far as the situation now is concerned, the Supreme Court will deliver its verdict in all probability in this case on the 22nd of October, after which if the Supreme Court sort of stays the disqualification, these people will not fight the by-polls, and if the Supreme Court accepts their plea, they will of course go on to fight the elections. We will be taking some questions from our live viewers. Please keep sending them. I believe we already have some questions. We have a question. I don't have the name of the person who's asking the question. What is the politics behind this? Is the Election Commission trying to favor the BJP? Well, we are not quite in a position to say who the Election Commission is favoring or not favoring. All we can say at this point is that the Election Commission's stand, according to our sources in the commission, is based on the fact that the commission wanted to avoid any state of confusion. They wanted to avoid a second round of elections if the disqualification of these MLAs was to stay, and that is why what they felt was that it would be the best case scenario to delay the polls until the Supreme Court sort of decides, it gives its final verdict in this case. Please do keep sending us these questions. This is a developing story. We will be happy to answer them, and keep following the print for more stories on this issue. This is Sania Dhingra. Thank you so much for watching.